The first moments of your day are not just minutes. They are a message to your psyche. When you wake into disorder, when you let your surroundings dictate your mental state, you forfeit your sovereignty. But if you begin your day with intention, with ritual, with order, you immediately tell your nervous system, I am in command. You don't need a perfect home or monk-like discipline, but you do need clarity. Whether it's making your bed, cleaning your space, or sitting in 5 minutes of structured silence, you are drawing a line between chaos and control. Order is not about aesthetics, it is about psychology. External order reflects and reinforces internal discipline. If you live in a world where your environment is cluttered, where your decisions are reactionary, your mind cannot distinguish between noise and signal. You become more anxious, more distracted, less capable of sustained effort. Morning order becomes an anchor against that drift. It tells your brain what matters, and it builds a container for the rest of your responsibilities to fit into. Most people underestimate the power of a predictable, structured start. They believe discipline must always feel punishing, rigid, robotic. But that's not true. Structure is freedom. It removes decision fatigue. It liberates you from the paralysis of options. When you already know the first 3 things you're going to do upon waking, your energy is conserved, your willpower is focused. You don't waste it wrestling with trivial decisions. A chaotic morning compounds failure. If you're checking your phone before you've checked in with your own mind, you're already giving up your center. The digital world pulls your attention outward before you've located it inward. It's like stepping into a battlefield without armor. But order, something as simple as writing down a task, drinking water, and stretching, protects you from being immediately hijacked by the world's demands. There is a moral dimension to how you start your day, because how you do the small things bleeds into how you do everything. If you begin sloppily, you tolerate sloppiness. If you begin reactively, you train yourself to only act when pushed. But if you rise with a plan, if you show reverence to your time, you are shaping your character. This is not just about productivity, it's about dignity. It's about how seriously you take the hours you've been given. People think motivation is the fuel, but it isn't. Motivation comes and goes. What matters is momentum. And momentum is birthed through repeated, consistent action, especially in the morning. The moment you delay, snooze, scroll, or avoid, you're not just losing time, you're eroding trust in yourself. But when you execute even a small part of your morning routine, you earn that trust back. One win in the first hour of the day can create a psychological chain reaction. You need to decide who is architecting your day, your future self or your distracted self. One leads to growth, the other to guilt. Order is the tool of the future self. It is the scaffolding that allows complexity, ambition, and pressure to be managed. You don't need to conquer the whole day at once. You need to conquer the first hour. From that foundation, the rest becomes manageable. Not easy, but manageable. Begin your day as if the rest of your life depends on it. Because in many ways, it does. The hardest task of the day is often the one most closely tied to your growth. It's the phone call you're afraid to make, the report you keep delaying, the workout you keep skipping. And because it carries the most resistance, it also carries the most meaning. When you postpone it, you're not just pushing back a task. You're avoiding a part of yourself that demands to be strengthened. When you tackle it first, you signal to your mind that you're capable of confronting discomfort without negotiation. Human willpower is not infinite. It's highest in the morning and deteriorates with every decision, distraction, and delay. That means procrastination doesn't just push the hard thing into another time slot, it pushes it into a less capable version of yourself. By afternoon, the resistance feels heavier, not lighter. So the choice to do the hardest task first is less about preference and more about neurobiology. You're aligning your peak mental state with your greatest challenge. Avoiding the hard task breeds shame, and shame compounds. You might not feel it immediately, but by the end of the day, that unfinished task sits in the back of your mind like a weight you cannot shake. It whispers, you failed again, even when everything else got done. But when you do it first, before emails, before social media, before the easy victories, you rob that shame of its power. You begin the day with a kind of integrity that doesn't need to be advertised. It changes how you carry yourself. Doing the hard thing first is also an act of war against mediocrity. It's easy to fill a day with shallow victories, checking boxes that don't move you forward, answering messages that could have waited, cleaning corners while the foundation rots. But the hardest task usually involves long-term reward, financial, emotional, spiritual. And anything that yields long-term reward usually requires short-term sacrifice. The early battle against comfort is a defining moment of the day. This practice forces you to prioritize with brutal honesty. You stop asking, what can I finish quickly? And instead ask, what matters most? It rewires your approach to value. It teaches you to pursue significance over convenience. The more you do this, the clearer your days become. Not simpler, but clearer. You waste less energy on the unessential because you've already faced the mountain instead of rearranging pebbles. Doing the hardest thing first cultivates courage. Not loud, dramatic courage, but quiet, consistent courage. The kind that doesn't need applause, only repetition. You face resistance head on, not because you like it, but because you understand its purpose. That courage over time becomes part of your identity. It shapes how others see you, but more importantly, how you see yourself. You become the kind of person who leans in, not away. There's a strange paradox here. When you make the day harder at the start, it gets easier as it goes. You've already proven you can lift the heaviest weight. You've already quieted the voice that says, maybe later. Everything else feels lighter in comparison. Momentum builds, focus sharpens, and time stretches. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. Not because it changed, because you did. The hardest task is the gatekeeper to your future self. Each time you choose to face it rather than flee it, you take a step toward that version of yourself who is more disciplined, more grounded, more free. You're not just getting things done, you're getting better. The avoidance of that task is the avoidance of transformation. The confrontation of it is the beginning of everything real. Time is not just a measurement of passing hours. It is the raw material of your existence. When you treat it as if it's endless, you waste it on things that don't matter. But when you begin to understand that time is finite and more than that, sacred, you start to examine every commitment, every conversation, every distraction through a sharper lens. The moments you spend today are not neutral. They are traded for pieces of your life you will never get back. Guarding your time means you stop letting people steal it through their chaos. There are those who do not manage their own lives, who expect you to absorb their emergencies, their emotional clutter, their indecision. If you don't protect your time, they will use it as if it were theirs. And the worst part, they won't even notice what they've taken. Your silence, your compliance. It becomes permission, and you end up resenting not them, but yourself. One of the most powerful boundaries you can set in life is how and where you allow your time to be used. It's not selfish, it's survival. When you say yes to something, you are, by definition, saying no to something else. That no might be your health, your rest, your growth, your creativity. You must become ruthlessly aware of what your time costs, and whether what you're getting in return is worth the price. Technology has made time theft look productive. Notifications, endless scrolling, digital noise. These things pull your attention in 100 directions, each one small, but collectively devastating. You think you're staying connected, but what you're really doing is fragmenting your focus. And every moment of scattered attention is a moment stolen from deliberate purpose. The average day is not lost in one big decision, it's lost in 1,000 small concessions. Guarding your time means learning how to say no, not just to others, but to the parts of yourself that sabotage progress. The inner voice that says, "I'll do it tomorrow." The craving for comfort over discipline, the distraction disguised as urgency. You must silence that internal resistance with the clarity of your values. Discipline is not the enemy of freedom. It is the vehicle that delivers you to it. There is nothing noble about being constantly available. The world praises business like it's a virtue, but business is often a lack of priority disguised as productivity. The person who is truly in control of their life does not rush. They move with intention. They protect white space on their calendar the way a warrior guards a fortress. Because they know that silence, solitude, and stillness are where real insight lies. Every hour you spend is an act of investment. The question is, are you investing in survival or in significance? When you guard your time, you start building something deeper than schedules. You build a life that reflects your values. You find more energy, more clarity, more power in your decisions because you've stopped wasting your most precious resource on what does not serve your soul. The people who respect your time will rise to meet you. The ones who don't will fall away. And that's how it should be. When you guard your time like it's sacred, you attract relationships, opportunities, and experiences that honor the same truth. You stop chasing life and start choosing it. You stop existing on other people's terms and begin to live on your own, as saying what you mean is not about aggression or dominance. It's about alignment between your internal reality and your external expression. Most people live in a kind of quiet contradiction, smiling when they disagree, nodding when they should protest, remaining silent when their soul is screaming. And the cost of this internal betrayal compounds over time until one day, they don't recognize who they become when you suppress what you truly think. You fracture your integrity. You start living in fragments, pleasing others while silently resenting them, agreeing outwardly while revolting inwardly. This is not peace. This is fear dressed up as politeness. And it rots you from within because you are outsourcing your voice to the approval of others. Saying what you mean doesn't require cruelty. It requires clarity. It means choosing truth over comfort, reality over illusion. There will be moments when your voice shakes, when your hands tremble, when your heart pounds. But those are not signs that you are weak. Those are signs that you are telling the truth after years of pretending otherwise. The fear of conflict is often just a fear of disconnection. We imagine that if we speak honestly, people will leave. But here's the paradox: by not speaking, we create a deeper disconnection, not just from others, but from ourselves. Authenticity is the only real foundation for intimacy. If you want to be seen, you must be willing to show up as you are, not as who you think others want you to be. When you say what you mean, you take responsibility for your life. You stop blaming others for your silence. You stop expecting people to read your mind. You begin to step into adult territory, the kind where truth is not weaponized but honored. This doesn't mean saying everything that crosses your mind. It means speaking from a place of principle rather than reaction. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the decision to act in spite of it. Your voice will shake. That's part of the process. You're learning to be loyal to your truth in a world that rewards performance. But with every tremble, your voice gets stronger. With every risk, your boundaries get clearer. You learn that discomfort is temporary, but self-abandonment leaves scars. Society teaches us to fit in, to smooth out our rough edges, to avoid making others uncomfortable. But truth doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't soften itself to be liked. It stands, sometimes awkwardly, always firmly. And when you learn to speak that truth, you begin to attract those who resonate with your real voice. Not your curated one. There will be losses. That's inevitable. Some people are in your life only as long as you keep lying to yourself. But there will also be gains. Clarity, strength, alignment. You'll learn that your voice is not a liability, but a compass. And even when it shakes, It points you toward a life that actually belongs to you. Refusing to be a slave to your mood is the difference between living reactively and living intentionally. Moods are fleeting, unstable, and often rooted in things far outside your control. Whether blood sugar asleep, a passing comment from a stranger. When you build your actions around how you feel in the moment, you give away your agency to forces that have no loyalty to your growth. Emotions are real, but they are not reliable guides for long-term decision-making. You may not feel like exercising, working, or even being kind, but if you wait for motivation to show up before you do what matters, you will live a life of excuses. Growth demands consistency, not convenience. And consistency is born from commitment, not from feeling good. Mood-driven behavior is childish. It's the tantrum of the inner self that never matured beyond instant gratification. If you want to live as an adult, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually, you have to choose your values over your moods, discipline over ease, truth over comfort. You have to become the kind of person who does what is right, not just what is easy or emotionally gratifying in the short term. This isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about not allowing your mood to hijack your direction. Acknowledge your feelings, observe them, name them, let them move through you, but don't build your life around them. They are data, not destiny. A storm passing through does not change the coordinates of a ship anchored in truth. The most dangerous moods are often quiet ones. Apathy, laziness, entitlement, cynicism. These don't come with warning sirens. They creep in subtly, lowering your standards day by day until you wake up and wonder where your purpose went. If you follow those moods long enough, you lose yourself. Not all at once, but incrementally, like water carving away rock. Refusing to serve your mood is an act of rebellion against the part of you that would rather stay small. It's a declaration that your life will be led by reason, responsibility, and chosen purpose. You don't need to feel like doing something in order to do it. You need to decide it matters, and then do it regardless of the emotional weather inside your skull. The paradox is that the more you ignore your moods in favor of what's meaningful, the more your moods begin to serve you. They stabilize. They mature. You build emotional muscle. You develop a steadiness that others begin to notice. Not because you never feel anything, but because your feelings don't own you. You become a force in your own life, not a passenger. There is power in waking up and saying, I don't feel like it, but I'm doing it anyway. That is the foundation of freedom. It's the difference between being ruled by the chaos of emotion or being anchored in the clarity of conviction. And once you build that discipline, you no longer need to wait on your mood to tell you are or what you can do. Ending the day with brutal self-review isn't an act of cruelty, it's an act of clarity. Most people drift through their days collecting distractions, noise, and half-truths about who they are and what they've done. They prefer comfort over confrontation. But when you sit with yourself without delusion and interrogate your actions, you begin to recover the agency you've lost throughout the day. The review is not about shaming yourself. It's about waking up. Where did you waste time today? What did you say that you didn't mean? When did you act out of fear instead of principle? These questions cut through the illusions. They force you to stand in front of the mirror without filters. Most people don't want that mirror. They want to feel good. But growth is rarely found in the comfortable narrative. There's a kind of spiritual violence in honest reflection. It exposes weakness, laziness, and self-betrayal. It reminds you that excellence is not automatic and that your potential decays daily if you don't nurture it. The modern world thrives on distraction. Scrolling, binging, numbing out. Brutal reflection is a rebellion against that numbing. It's a return to awareness. When you examine your day, patterns emerge. You begin to see how often you're driven by the same emotional scripts: resentment, fear, pride, avoidance. And only in recognizing those loops can you start to rewrite them. The key is not to rationalize failure, but to study it. You're not a victim of your day, you're its author. And if the story you wrote today was full of cowardice or compromise, you need to own that most people avoid this process because it hurts. But what hurts more is a life of slow decay. A life where years pass and you've changed nothing. When you end the day honestly, you gain leverage over tomorrow. You stop repeating mistakes. You start living with intention. You trade the false comfort of ignorance for the power of self-knowledge. Write it down. Don't trust your memory. It edits to protect your ego. Capture what you did well, where you fell short, and what you'll differently. Don't let it be a vague mental exercise. Put it in front of you on paper where it can stare back without flinching. That's where growth begins. In the space between who you are today and who you refuse to be tomorrow. Over time, this nightly ritual becomes sacred. It grounds you. It teaches you that your days aren't random. They are rehearsals of your character. You stop measuring life in hours and start measuring it in integrity. That shift is subtle but seismic. You begin to fear wasted potential more than you fear failure, and eventually you start to live differently. Not because someone told you to, but because you've seen what happens when you lie to yourself. That internal audit each night becomes your compass. It strips away the noise and leaves behind what matters: the truth, however uncomfortable. And the opportunity to do something about it. Comfort, while seductive, is not a worthy destination. It is a temporary state often mistaken for success or fulfillment, but in truth, it's a trap. The modern world has made comfort far too accessible. Soft chairs, endless entertainment, instant gratification. But comfort without purpose corrodes the soul. It breeds stagnation, weakness, and apathy. The longer one rests in comfort without direction, the harder it becomes to stand up again. A purpose greater than comfort acts as a compass. It points beyond the momentary relief of ease and towards something difficult but meaningful. Comfort asks nothing of you. It demands no sacrifice, but purpose, real purpose, demands everything. It requires that you bleed, struggle, and endure, not because suffering is noble in itself, but because transformation requires it. Without that struggle, there's no refinement, only decay. People who live only for comfort begin to fear discomfort. They avoid the hard conversation, the discipline routine, the physical exertion, the spiritual confrontation. They shield themselves from reality. But the more you avoid discomfort, the smaller your world becomes. Purpose, by contrast, stretches you. It requires you to face what you would rather avoid. And in doing so, it forces you to become someone capable of carrying something heavy. A life aligned with purpose doesn't chase happiness. It creates meaning. Happiness comes and goes. Meaning anchors. The man or woman who rises each day with something worth enduring for is not swayed by the highs and lows. They don't need constant validation or comfort because their energy is directed outward toward a cause larger than themselves. This is not romanticism, it's survival. Purpose gives shape to suffering and makes it bearable. Too many people in later life fall into the trap of ease. They believe they've earned rest, and to some degree they have. But rest without a mission becomes a slow death, muscles weaken, minds dull, and the soul becomes bitter. Not because of aging, but because of aimlessness. The body may retire, but the spirit cannot afford to. If you don't give it something to carry, it will start to collapse under its own weight. This is why mentors, teachers, volunteers, and creators often thrive well into old age. Their purpose did not retire with their career. They found something greater to serve. Wisdom to pass on. People to build up, beauty, contribute. The moment they stopped asking, what makes me comfortable? And began asking, what am I here to uphold? Their life stopped shrinking and started expanding again. Comfort has its place. It's necessary for recovery, for healing, for Sabbath. But it cannot be the goal. Comfort is a station along road, not the end of the journey. Purpose, by contrast, is a direction, is not always clear, and it often changes shape. But it is always forward. It calls you out of passivity and into action. And in answering that call, you become someone who can bear the weight of their own existence with dignity. To maintain a purpose greater than comfort is to resist the pull of mediocrity. It's to decide, sometimes daily, that your life is not about ease, but impact. It's a quiet rebellion against the voices that say, you've done enough, when your conscience knows there's still more in you. It's the difference between simply existing and truly living. The promises you make to yourself are not just goals or habits. They are declarations of who you believe you are capable of becoming. Each time you say, I will wake up early, or I will stop tolerating what weakens me, and you follow through, you aren't merely completing a task, you are chiseling your character. You are laying bricks in the structure of your identity. Built not on fantasy, but on integrity. Breaking promises to yourself, however, is not harmless, corrosive. It sends a message deep into your psyche that your word means nothing, that you cannot be trusted, even by yourself. The erosion of self-respect doesn't start with grand betrayals, it begins with small, silent compromises. Hitting snooze after committing to rise early, eating poorly after vowing to nourish your body, tolerating toxicity after deciding to walk away. These are not just habits. They are identity fractures. When you consistently fail to keep your word to yourself, you slowly lose the ability to believe in your own capacity to change. This self-doubt seeps into everything. You hesitate before making commitments. You stop dreaming too far ahead because you suspect you won't follow through anyway. And worst of all, you stop trusting your own potential. You become a spectator of your life instead of the one shaping it, but keeping promises to yourself, especially when it's hard, rewires that narrative. It creates alignment between intention and action. You stop being at war with yourself. Your internal dialogue shifts from cynicism to confidence. Said I do it, and I did, becomes a phrase that echoes in your mind. That's power. Not because you shouted it into the world, but because you whispered it to yourself and then followed through. This process builds something far more durable than motivation. It builds identity. Motivation fluctuates. It's emotional. It's reactive. But identity is stable. When the storm comes, you don't rely on how you feel. You rely on who you've become. If you're someone who keeps their promises, then discipline is no longer a struggle. It's simply what you do because it's who you are. That identity shields you against chaos. Keeping promises also breeds clarity. When you know your own word is binding, you become more discerning about what you commit to. You stop chasing impulsive goals and start making choices that actually align with your values. Your life becomes less noisy. There's less confusion, less internal debate, because you've trained yourself to follow through with what matters and not waste energy on what doesn't. It also earns you a type of respect that can't be faked, respect from yourself. You stop needing others to validate you because you know in your bones that you are someone who shows up. That doesn't mean perfection. It means consistency. It means recovering quickly when you falter instead of spiraling into shame.